They were cutting down trees on my land, and one of them actually waved at me like I was supposed to thank him for it. Another had spray painted a bright white circle on my well head. When I asked what the hell they were doing, he said, "Just prepping the site, boss. HOA wants this trailhead ready by Monday. I bought this house 6 years ago. No sentimental ties, no inheritance, no dead relatives handing me deeds from their hospital bed. Just me, a clean contract, and a quiet corner of the state that nobody seemed to care about, which is exactly why I wanted it. I'm not a hippie, I don't hug trees, but I do like quiet, and I hate people telling me what shade of taupe my porch has to be. That's not a lifestyle, that's a hostage situation. Back then, I was still doing forensic cartography full-time. Boundary disputes, title conflicts, old deeds from the 1800s written in fountain pen and whiskey. So when I saw this property listed tucked behind a ridge outside HOA jurisdiction and wedged next to what the county called a non-developable municipal buffer, I knew exactly what that meant. Nobody owns it, and nobody wants to. That forest behind my house, the one with the hickories and the scrub oaks and the fox trails, it's not mine, but it's also not theirs. Not the HOAs, not the counties, not the states. It's a bureaucratic ghost zone. I spent weeks digging through records, overlaying maps, cross-referencing plats and survey layers. No claims, no pending transfers, no easements, just a blank space where everything else had a number. That's what sold me. I didn't move here for neighbors, I didn't come for the community events or to trade casserole recipes with people named Carol. I came because that forest gave me a guarantee that what I saw from my back window would still be there tomorrow. I built everything on that assumption. Simple house, big window, quiet mornings. No one behind me, just a patch of woods that didn't answer to anybody. I never messed with it, never cleared it, just kept a respectful distance and let it breathe. And for 6 years, nobody said a word. No complaints, no visits, no flyers, nothing, until now. The first red flag came in the form of a damn postcard. No envelope, no explanation. Just one of those glossy mailers with way too much clip art and fonts that screamed designed by someone's nephew and Microsoft publisher. Front side said, "Coming soon, Willow Ridge Nature Commons." Underneath, in italics, a shared outdoor experience for the whole community. I remember staring at it for a good 30 seconds thinking, okay, and? I flipped it over, and that's when my stomach dropped. They had a map on the back. It wasn't a detailed one, just a rough layout with green swirls for trails and little cartoon hikers with backpacks, but it was enough. Right there, circled in cheerful forest green, was the exact patch of land behind my house. And not just the buffer woods, my actual property line was shaded in too. They'd even marked my gravel driveway with a trailhead icon. I'm not joking. They literally drew a fake hiking entrance over my land like it was a goddamn park gate. I thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe someone in their HOA office just pulled the wrong data set or didn't know how boundaries work. I mean, I give people the benefit of the doubt. Once. So I grabbed the card, walked 2 blocks down to the HOA Welcome Center, which is just a big prefab ranch house with fake columns and a badly leveled sidewalk, and asked to speak to whoever came up with the map. That's how I met Georgia Fenwick. She was sitting behind a curved desk with a nameplate and a stack of folders, looking like she just walked out of a Suburban makeover show. Perfect nails, blazer with shoulder pads, and the kind of tight smile you reserve for waiters who forget your lemon slice. She didn't even stand up. I held out the postcard and said, "Hey, small thing, but I think you've got a mistake here. That land you're calling Phase 1, that's not part of your development. And this trailhead, that's my driveway." She looked at the card, tilted her head slightly, and gave this light laugh. "Oh, you must be one of the properties on the South Ridge. Don't worry, it's all part of the long-term integration plan. You'll be contacted soon with the easement information. It's a huge opportunity for community engagement." I blinked. Integration plan? No one's contacted me about anything. That forest isn't yours. It's not even in your HOA footprint. She waved a hand like I'd just said something adorable. Well, technically, it's classified as a municipal buffer, but we've worked with the county on a joint use agreement. It's all part of our Greenway initiative. Eventually, we hope to merge the unmanaged land into our commons so everyone can benefit from it. I said, as calmly as I could manage, "There's no such agreement filed." I would have seen it. I do this for a living. That forest has no recorded ownership transfer, no legal access path, and 0 jurisdiction from your HOA. Her smile didn't even twitch. "Well, that's what you believe," she said, "but the board has already voted. We've got a committee working on signage and trail markers, and we've started clearing invasive growth near the ridge." I froze. "You've what?" "Oh, nothing major, just a preliminary brush clearing team, volunteers, it's all very low impact. We want to make sure the path is ready before the ribbon cutting." I stared at her. "You sent people into that forest already?" She tilted her head again, full condescension now. "Sir, I don't know why you're getting so worked up. It's just a trail. You should be excited. Your home's going to be the scenic gateway to the Willow Ridge Nature Commons." And I swear to God, she actually said that with pride in her voice, like she was doing me a favor by putting a public hiking trail 10 feet from my bathroom window. That was the moment I realized something important. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a paperwork mix-up. This was the opening shot. The next morning, I woke up to chainsaws. Not metaphorically, actual chainsaws, somewhere past the tree line, maybe 50 yards behind my fence, and close, real close. I threw on boots, grabbed a jacket, and jogged out the back door. The woods had that early morning fog still clinging to the ground, and through the haze I saw flashes of orange safety vests moving between the trees. 3 of them. One had a chainsaw slung over his shoulder, another was spray painting a tree trunk with neon pink dots. The third guy was holding a clipboard and drinking from a stainless steel tumbler, like this was his usual Tuesday. "Hey," I shouted, "what the hell are you doing?" The guy with the tumbler turned like I'd just interrupted a yoga session. "Morning, we're just marking out the trail alignment. Don't worry, we're staying within the proposed corridor." I walked straight up to him, staying on my side of the fence. "There is no corridor, there's no easement, there's no legal anything out here. You're trespassing." He furrowed his brow, clearly confused. "Aren't you Lot 18? Georgia said you'd already signed the access waiver." I actually laughed. "Number, I'm not in your HOA, I'm not Lot anything. This is a private parcel with a separate plat and deed. Georgia doesn't control a single square inch of this." That gave him pause. He turned to one of the other guys and said something quietly. Then they packed up like someone had hit a buzzer. Within 5 minutes, they were walking back toward the ridge trail with their gear, not a word of apology. And I thought maybe that was the end of it. Wishful thinking. That same afternoon, I got an envelope taped to my front door. No stamp, no return address, just a plain white envelope with my name printed in Comic Sans like an insult. Inside was a friendly notice of community standards review. Let me remind you again, I'm not part of any HOA, but the letter said I was under informal evaluation for non-compliance with shared visual corridor standards, that my perimeter fencing height exceeds acceptable thresholds, and that visible refuse barrels along the east-facing facade create visual pollution inconsistent with neighboring properties. Translation, I had a 6-foot wooden fence and a trash can. The next day, someone, I still don't know who, stacked river stones across the bottom of my driveway. Not big ones, but enough to pop a tire if you hit them wrong. I had to get out and move them by hand, one by one. Found another community guidelines flyer wedged under my windshield when I came back from the grocery store. No envelope, just a line at the bottom that said, "Let's all pitch in to make Willow Ridge better, together." That night, I emailed the county zoning office and attached photos of everything. The response I got 2 days later might as well have been written by a toaster. "We appreciate your concerns and will investigate the matter as appropriate." No follow-up, no contact. Then came the worst of it. I was walking the tree line again a few days later, and I noticed something weird. The ground was torn up. Not just tire tracks, full-on trenching. About a foot deep and maybe 50 feet long, starting at the edge of the woods and running parallel to my south boundary. Inside the trench? Orange conduit, new, clean PVC. Somebody had laid pipe. I followed the trench until it disappeared into the undergrowth. No signs, no permits, no flag markers, just open, raw ground, like someone was laying infrastructure in secret. That night, I pulled up the most recent aerial imagery of the area, publicly available thanks to a recent statewide flyover. I overlaid it with the GIS parcels and easements, and there it was. They'd updated the county's boundary map, quietly, subtly, just enough to shift a portion of the forest and my land into the HOA overlay. It wasn't official, the plat hadn't changed, but the visuals had, and for most people, the visuals are what count. Realtors, inspectors, contractors, they'd all assume the HOA controlled that land now, because the map said so. And who did I find listed as the GIS update liaison on the HOA's Greenway Project Committee? Georgia Fenwick. At that point, I wasn't just pissed off, I was stunned. They hadn't filed anything legal, they hadn't acquired the land, they just redrew the map. And if I hadn't caught it, if I hadn't had the skills to catch it, nobody would have questioned it. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about a trail. This was about control, and they were already playing for keeps. I didn't want to fight. Honestly, I didn't. People think just because I work with boundary law and old land records that I live for conflict. I don't. I like clean paperwork, quiet mornings, and clear lines. That's it. So before I started swinging legal axes, I gave them every chance to walk it back. First thing I did was drive down to the county zoning office in person. No more emails, no more forms disappearing into the digital void. I took a folder with my deed, my survey plat, printed maps, even screenshots of the fraudulent boundary overlay from their own GIS site. Walked up to the front counter, asked to speak to whoever handled municipal parcel data updates. The woman behind the counter looked like I'd just asked to see the Ark of the Covenant. "Do you have an appointment?" "I'm not here for a permit," I said. "I'm here because someone altered a digital map to claim land that doesn't belong to them." She hesitated, clicked a few things on her computer, then said, "You'll need to submit a public record inquiry through the planning review portal." "Right, bureaucrat for get in line and bring snacks." I pushed gently. "Can I at least speak with whoever authorized the GIS update? It was modified 2 weeks ago under the Willow Ridge Greenway file set." That got me a name. Paul Hennessy, assistant planner. I left my cell number and a brief note, and to my surprise, he called me later that afternoon. "Mr. Navarro," he said, in the same voice people use when they find a weird noise under their car hood. "I did see the adjustment. That was based on a map submitted by the HOA liaison. Was it legally filed?" He paused. "Well, not exactly. It was submitted during a Greenway planning session. It wasn't meant to trigger enforcement, more like a placeholder for community planning." "And did you vet it?" Another pause. "I mean, they had diagrams. It looked like a working draft, not an official parcel transfer." I tried to keep my voice steady. "Paul, they're using it as if it's official. They're marking trees, digging trenches, leaving trash on my land. And now the county's own system is telling people I don't even own what I legally bought." He sighed. "I'll flag the overlay for review, okay? But it might take a while to process. We're pretty backed up." Of course they are. I thanked him anyway. I'm not rude to the foot soldiers. I've worked in enough agencies to know where the brakes are built into the machine. Then I tried talking to Georgia. That might have been a mistake. I showed up at the next HOA open board meeting. I use quotes there because it was held in the Willow Ridge Clubhouse, which looks like a wedding venue that forgot it's in the suburbs. I wasn't even allowed into the meeting room at first. A guy in a polo shirt with a name badge that said HOA Event Security tried to tell me the meeting was for residents only. "I own land next door to your development," I said, holding up the rolled up map tube in my hand, "and your board president is trespassing on it." That got some attention. Georgia finally came out about 20 minutes later. She was all smiles, like I was a long-lost cousin who just wandered into Thanksgiving. "Victor," she said, holding out her hands like we were old friends, "I wish you'd let me know you were coming. This isn't the place for technical disputes." I kept it short. "You need to stop sending people into the woods behind my property. You need to remove your signage, and you need to retract the updated GIS map." Her smile froze for a second. Just a flicker. Then she tilted her head and said, "Victor, this has been approved by a supermajority vote. The board has every intention of moving forward with the trail system. If you're uncomfortable, I suggest filing a concern with the municipal liaison." "Already did," I said, "and I also filed a preliminary complaint with the registrar's office for false representation of land use." That wiped the smile right off her face, but she didn't flinch. "Then I suppose we'll have to let the process play out." "You forged a trailhead on private land." "I visualized a concept," she said, as if I'd just misquoted her poetry. "There's a difference." I walked out of that clubhouse with two things. A solid understanding that Georgia Fenwick did not give a damn about process. A paper cup of bad coffee that tasted like spite and dish soap. I still tried one more route. I contacted a local land use attorney named Kellerman, not to sue yet, but just to get options. He listened patiently, went through my paperwork, and finally said, "Well, everything you've shown me is clean. You've got a solid paper trail, no HOA attachment, and no easements, but..." There's always a but. But this county's a gray zone when it comes to jurisdictional overlays. The HOA can't legally take your land, but they can cloud the records, muddy the maps, and pressure the offices to act on unofficial plans. They don't need to win, they just need to exhaust you. I nodded. "Yeah, that tracks." "You want my advice?" he asked. "If you're not ready for a full suit yet, shine light on it. These people work in the shadows, drag it into the open." So I went home, sat on my porch, watched the tree line for movement, and I decided, all right, they don't want law, let's see how they like truth. Because the next time I step into those woods, I'm not coming with complaints. I'm coming with evidence. About a week after the fake board meeting, I was in my office going through old land records. Not for them, just for me. Honestly, I needed the distraction. You ever get that feeling where you know something's off, but you can't prove it yet? That's where I was. Not angry, not panicking, just that low, electric hum under your skin that says, you're missing something. I was scrolling through the public land database again, just checking if the GIS overlay had been quietly reverted. It hadn't. Same doctored boundaries. But then I spotted something weird. One of the file references tied to the forest buffer area, a code I hadn't seen before, had a subfolder labeled Non-Residential Utility Corridor, NRUC, Conditional Filing 2019. That didn't make sense. See, when something's listed as non-residential, that usually means it's reserved for infrastructure. Power lines, pipelines, drainage, telecom. But this area, there were no records of any current utilities running through it. No easements. Nothing. I clicked through. Half the documents were redacted, not classified, just messy PDFs with chunks missing. But one thing stood out. A topographic map from 1998 scanned from paper. At first glance, it looked like a simple terrain layout, but there was a faint grid pattern drawn over a section of the woods. My section. I leaned in. Near the edge of the map, in small type, it read, Geophysical Anomaly, 1967. USA Study Area B3. Subsurface voids consistent with Cold War-era construction. No further excavation permitted without federal coordination. My hands went cold. I ran a search on the code, USACEB-3, and started pulling old military infrastructure logs. Turns out, back in the 60s, the Army Corps of Engineers did exploratory tunneling in our region. Mostly test shelters, emergency storage, classified junk that never saw the light of day. Half of it was sealed and forgotten when the budgets dried up. But the kicker? One of the candidate sites for an underground personnel shelter, listed as incomplete, sealed, and logged inactive, was directly beneath that forest. Right under the stretch the HOA was trying to claim. Right where they'd laid that orange conduit. Right where they were trenching with trail markers. They weren't just building a trail, they were building over something. Something federal, something buried, and very much not theirs to touch. I sat back in my chair, heart thudding. And here's the thing that really twisted the knife. Georgia had to know. Someone on her board had seen these files, or worse, had them all along. This wasn't a mistake. This was a bet that nobody would notice what they were digging into. And that if they kept it quiet, paved it over with community signs and happy little bike lanes, it would just vanish, swallowed by trails and homeowners who never asked too many questions. This wasn't just a land grab anymore. This was a cover-up, and I had the map to prove it. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept replaying the same thought over and over. They were digging over a sealed federal site. Not just any random hole in the woods, a classified Cold War-era installation marked in official records as a no-go zone. And Georgia? She either knew and ignored it, or worse, she knew and figured no one would ever connect the dots. That's when the switch flipped in my head. This wasn't about easements anymore. This wasn't about tree markers or fake maps. It wasn't even about my land. This was about them being willing to risk everything, legal liability, federal violation, environmental damage, just to expand their little HOA kingdom. And if they were betting I'd roll over, they bet wrong. So I made a list, a real, physical list, pen and paper, not digital. I don't trust electronics when things start getting weird. Here's what I needed. Copies of every document tied to Site B3, a clean version of the 1998 topographic map, a statement from someone with actual credentials in geotech or civil infrastructure, one local journalist who wasn't owned by real estate money, and a way to make the county's zoning board really uncomfortable. I started with the documents. I already had most of the PDFs, but I needed physical proof, things I could show at a hearing, or better yet, a press conference. So I pulled a few strings. A buddy of mine from a land use symposium years ago now worked as a contractor with USACE. I emailed him a casual, "Hey, remember this code?" with a photo of the anomaly label. He called me back 20 minutes later. "Where the hell did you get this?" "Public records dump," I said. "Is it real?" He exhaled. "It's real, and it's not supposed to be touched. There are liability waivers the Corps filed just to walk away from it. Structural voids, improper sealing, asbestos. Hell, some of those sites have underground wiring that's still hot." I told him about the trenching, the conduit, the plan to build trails right over it. He didn't even hesitate. "If anyone punctures that vault, you're looking at a hazmat level response. Tell whoever's doing that work to stop immediately. If they won't, file a federal safety report, use the emergency line, and document everything. Step 1, complete. Next, I reached out to a geotech professor I knew from my consulting days, Dr. Marla Ridgway. We'd worked a boundary case together a few years back, and I remembered she had a thing for anomalies and forgotten infrastructure. She owed me a favor. She agreed to review the map and the soil shifts I'd photographed, even offered to do a short-form affidavit if I needed it. Then I called a local journalist, not from the newspaper, which was basically a newsletter for realtors, but an independent watchdog blog called Civic Pulse. The guy who runs it, Leon, used to be a zoning clerk until he blew the whistle on a developer trying to rezone wetlands for a strip mall. He said, "Wait, you're telling me an HOA is trenching over a sealed army shelter and trying to pretend it's a community trail?" "Yep." "And you have the map?" "I do." "I'll be there with a drone, a camera crew, and a pot of coffee tomorrow morning. Good?" "Perfect." Last on the list, the zoning board. I didn't file a complaint. I filed a notice of environmental hazard discovery linked to unauthorized development. I copied in the planning commissioner, the county attorney, the local EPA liaison, and, just for fun, the Office of Emergency Management. Subject line, urgent. Unauthorized excavation near B3 classified subsurface site. Potential public safety violation. Attached, map scans, overlay comparisons, pictures of the trench and conduit, and a quote from the core contractor. Known structural voids may be present. Unauthorized excavation could result in catastrophic failure or exposure. I hit send, and then I waited, because the only thing more dangerous than a hidden federal site is someone digging it up without permission. And now the whole damn county knew. It all started at exactly 8:02 a.m. on a Tuesday. That's when Leon from Civic Pulse pulled up in a dusty blue Subaru, popped the hatch, and started unloading gear like we were prepping for a documentary shoot. Tripods, gimbal rigs, a wireless mic, and, I kid you not, a drone case with "property of your worst nightmare" written in Sharpie on the side. "Where's the trench?" he asked, no small talk. "Right past the ridgeline," I said. "Bring boots." I walked him through everything, the trench, the spray-painted trees, the orange conduit still barely covered in dirt. Then I showed him the map, the overlays, the federal reference to Site B3. He didn't blink, just turned on the mic and said, "All right, let's light a match." An hour later, the drone was circling overhead while I stood dead center in the forest, clearing holding up a printout of the 1998 Army Corps topographic map, the same map Georgia and her board had chosen to ignore. On camera, I explained, slowly and clearly, how it Dutch, what had happened. This forest sits over an inactive Cold War shelter, never completed, never stabilized. The Army Corps of Engineers sealed this site in the 1960s and marked it unsafe for further excavation. The HOA of Willow Ridge knew this and decided to build a trailhead over it anyway. Leon panned to the open trench. The conduit. The spools of orange line still sitting in the weeds like no one even bothered to clean up. That footage went live at 3 p.m. By 4:30, I had 4 missed calls from the HOA office. I didn't pick up. By 5 o'clock, the county planning office sent a formal reply to my hazard notice. Work at the identified location is suspended pending investigation. Cease and desist orders issued to all private contractors associated with Willow Ridge HOA. That same evening, Georgia showed up at my property line. No clipboard, no PR smile, just standing on the other side of my fence in her beige cardigan and those fake designer sneakers she always wears to look casual. She didn't speak at first, just watched me as I watered the raised garden beds next to my driveway. Finally, she said, "You really didn't have to take it this far." I turned off the hose. "You started digging over sealed federal infrastructure." "It's just a forgotten structure," she snapped. "They don't even list it in active records anymore, you know that." I shrugged. "Still illegal, still dangerous, still not yours." She stepped closer. This was supposed to be a legacy project, a greenway, a community space. "It was a land grab," I said, wrapped in bike trails and buzzwords. She looked tired. For the first time, I saw it. Under the gloss and control, she was cornered, trapped in the web she'd built. She dropped her voice low. "Do you realize what you've done?" "Yeah," I said. "I told the truth, publicly." The next day, I filed a formal petition with the county to amend the overlay map back to its original boundary. Clean lines, no HOA extension, no integration corridor. I had signatures from neighbors, video evidence, press coverage, and a written opinion from Dr. Ridgway about the structural risk. But the part that really did it? The drone footage. Leon had caught everything. The trench, the conduit, the exposed pipe. And, get this, 2 HOA contractors walking straight across the area, looking around nervously, then hopping over the ditch like they knew they weren't supposed to be there. Public hearing was scheduled for the following Thursday, and I showed up early, not out of nerves, I just wanted a good seat. The room filled up fast, local reporters, HOA board members, a couple county attorneys in suits that didn't quite fit. Even Paul Hennessy, the zoning tech I'd talked to weeks ago, sat in the back like he didn't want to be seen. Georgia showed up last, still playing president, still wearing pearls. When my name was called, I stood, unrolled the map, and spoke clearly. This isn't about trails, it's about trust, and it's about what happens when people in power decide they're above the lines that bind the rest of us. I showed them the altered GIS overlay, the real boundary lines, the core document. Then I dropped the final piece, a letter from the Regional Army Corps office confirming the status of Site B3 and the risk of unauthorized activity. This land isn't just mine, I said. It's marked federal. Any disturbance of that site without clearance isn't just a zoning issue, it's a felony. Silence. Then a low murmur, the sound of a dozen people realizing they'd been part of something a lot uglier than a nature trail. I looked over at Georgia. She wasn't smiling anymore. The board called a recess. Georgia walked out, never came back in. An hour later, the board voted unanimously to rescind the HOA's claim to the corridor, cancel all greenway construction, and formally request a federal site evaluation before further planning. And just like that, the forest was quiet again. But we weren't done yet, not by a long shot. I didn't think it would blow up like it did. I figured we'd get a few comments on Leon's blog, maybe a couple hundred views on the drone footage, and the zoning board would quietly walk it all back like they were tiptoeing away from a dumpster fire. But no, this thing went nuclear. By the weekend, the story was on the front page of the Sentinel. Full headline, all caps, HOA builds over federal site, zoning scandal exposed. They used the drone photo of the trench, the one with the exposed pipe, and the 2 contractors caught mid-step like deer in a spotlight. Leon did a follow-up video that went viral. I'm talking Reddit, YouTube, even TikTok clips with people narrating it like it was a true crime series. One woman called Georgia the Trailhead Tyrant. It stuck. Someone dug up footage from a town hall last year where Georgia bragged about pushing through greenway projects faster than anyone in the county. Spliced it with Leon's drone footage, added dramatic music, 4 million views in 3 days. It got to the point where even the local news couldn't ignore it. They ran a segment called Beneath the Trails, What HOA Didn't Want You to Know, cut between my interview and a muddy shot of the old Army map with subsurface void, circled in red. By Monday, the county commission issued an emergency stay on all HOA-sponsored development projects in the region pending a legal audit. Not just trails, everything. That includes 2 pool expansions, a clubhouse remodel, and an overpriced dog park Georgia had been hyping for 6 months. And speaking of Georgia, gone. Resigned voluntarily 2 days after the board meeting, but not before someone, not naming names, leaked her internal HOA emails. Turns out she'd been warned twice about the federal markings and told the committee it's a dead site, no one's gonna care. Yeah, people cared. Some of the juicier emails included phrases like, we can always file the permits after the ribbon cutting. Navarro doesn't have the resources to fight this. And my personal favorite, the forest is symbolic, not literal. She's now under formal investigation by the county attorney's office for falsifying land use records and bypassing environmental review protocols. Oh, and one of the contractors who laid the trench. Turns out he thought the whole thing was legal, until Leon published the video. He flipped immediately, sent a sworn affidavit admitting he was hired off-book for trail prep work, with no permits and direct instructions to avoid notifying the property owner. That affidavit is now part of a criminal probe. HOA meetings? You should have seen them after that. They had to bring in folding chairs just to handle all the angry homeowners demanding answers. People were yelling about misuse of funds, liability, lawsuits. One guy stood up and asked if his kid had been playing tag over a government fallout hole. Georgia's replacement, some poor retired dentist, looked like he wanted to crawl under the podium and disappear. Meanwhile, I kept getting thank you notes from people I'd never met. Neighbors, other property owners, even folks in other HOAs who'd seen the story and wanted to share their own horror shows. Apparently, standing up to a rogue HOA is the suburban equivalent of slaying a dragon. Who knew? Leon called me a few days later and said, "Just so you know, they're calling you the Cartography Avenger on TikTok." I told him that was ridiculous, then I bought the domain name just in case. A month later, the forest is quiet again. No chainsaws, no spray paint, no trailhead signs mysteriously appearing next to my driveway. Just the sound of wind through the trees, the occasional fox at dusk, and the satisfying knowledge that no one's trying to pave a hiking path over a Cold War vault anymore. The county ended up sealing the trench, professionally this time, and put up a permanent marker near the ridge. Federal hazard area, no unauthorized access. It's got a barcode and everything, looks very official. Ironically, it's the first honest sign to ever show up back there. Georgia vanished from public life entirely. Word is she sold her house and moved to one of those gated golf communities 3 counties over. Apparently the HOA there has actual rules, which must be a fun adjustment for her. As for me, I didn't sue. Didn't need to. Public humiliation did the job. And besides, I didn't want to spend the next 2 years in court when I could be out in the garden or walking the edge of the woods with my thermos. I've got peace now. Not because someone gave it to me, but because I held my line, literally. I did get one surprise though, a small one. A couple weeks after everything died down, I got a handwritten note in the mailbox. No name, just neat cursive on unlined paper. It said, "We always thought that forest was just empty space. Thank you for reminding us it matters." No signature, just that. I stuck it to the fridge. Not for ego, not as a trophy, just as a reminder that even out here, in the so-called quiet parts of the world, you've got to know where your lines are, and sometimes you've got to defend them, even if it means taking on a HOA, a fake trail, and a buried piece of the Cold War. But for now, I think I'll go make coffee, and maybe walk the woods one more time, just because I can.